Joining me here on Artimate, I consider him one of the most prolific and hardest working guitarists around right now. I think I lost count trying to figure out how many albums he's actually recorded, somewhere around 50 or 60, it seems. His name is Dave Stryker. He's a living legend, and he's here on Artimate, and I'm so excited to finally meet him for the first time seeing your face in person, kind of virtually. Welcome.
Yeah, hi, Kiana.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
It's great to meet you. And
You too.
via Zoom or but I'm sure we will be meeting in person soon.
I hope so. I hope so. Your music, gosh, you've been playing for a while since you've been considered a jazz musician, performing professionally since you were a teenager in Nebraska. You've been working a real long time. Are you tired yet?
No, I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful to be doing something that I love. And with all the craziness that comes our way in this world, I feel that music can bring positivity, and so
Mm.
I'm just grateful to have to be able to do what I'm doing.
Indeed. And it seems as if you've released an album almost like clockwork annually. We can expect to hear a Dave Stryker album and not just anything coming from you. It's always just amazing, top notch quality. You stay recording and creating. How do you continue to stay inspired and motivated to keep on going and recording and putting music out there?
Well, I was lucky when I came to New York from Omaha. I first went to LA for a couple of years, and then I I landed in New York in 1980. So I've been there a long time, and I guess I kicked around New York for about 10 years, um, trying to get a record deal and that kind of thing. So when um, about 1986, I got the gig with Stanley. Well, I should go back. About 84, I worked with Jack McDuff for 2 years, and then after that, 86 for about 10 years with Stanley Turrentine.
Wow.
But as far as my own recordings, I had done a my first record I recorded about 1988, and a label called Steeplechase picked it up eventually around night. So from 1990 for almost 20 years, Nils Winter at Steeplechase recorded me about once a year, and that it was it was great to have that opportunity to write music, put different projects together, and it seemed to work for me. Put out a record and then try to play gigs around that music, and then after about a year you're ready to do something new. So I would and having a record date coming up would inspire me to write some new music, knowing that I had to do that. So that's why I kind of about once a year have been able to put a record out. And then about 10 years ago, I decided to start my own label and continue that kind of once a year thing. And it's worked out great. And yeah, I'm so happy I've got to do all these different projects.
Yeah, you really got like a system going, a blueprint. I know that you also teach. Are you imparting that knowledge of productivity to your students? Because a lot of times you see musicians, you get an album and then you might have to wait 5 years, for another record to come out, and they're kind of just riding the wave of the album that they put out before. So I'm curious to know, um, what are your talks like with your students?
Yeah, I came to I guess I came to teaching. I had some private students I would teach, but as far as on the college level, I started doing. I went to when I was a kid. There was this thing called the Jamie Abersol workshops, and he's like a jazz educator, guru kind of guy, cool guy. Lives in Louisville area, and I went to one of those camps when I was from Omaha. Drove down to Wichita, Kansas, University of Wichita, and went to for two summers A lot of, instead of going to baseball camp or whatever. uh, well, no, I should say that this was actually, I was a little older. I was probably 17 by then or 18. But I went to these camps of Jamie Ebersold's, and that's kind of where I got introduced to jazz, learning about jazz. And it was amazing because of the musicians he had down there. In fact, my combo teacher, if you can believe this, was Joe Henderson.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and that was a definitely life-changing experience,
Sure.
to spend a week with Joe. So, but as my career progressed, Jamie kind of followed me and saw that I was making records, and then he asked me to start teaching at his workshop. So that's kind of where I started teaching more. And then by meeting some of the faculty that taught at different universities, I ended up, now I'm teaching. I ended up at Indiana University, where I commute from Jersey, if you can believe that, every other
Wow.
week. I go out
Wow.
there every other week for a couple days, and I've been doing that for 10 years. I also teach at Montclair State in Jersey, and at Rutgers now.
Wow.
So I have a pretty full schedule teaching during the school year, and this summer I have a pretty full schedule playing. So I'm out on the road right now with Steely Dan, so opening up for them. But yeah, as far as teaching, I didn't come from a college background. I was lucky in that there was still an apprenticeship system in place somewhat. Like I mentioned, with a guy like Jack McDuff, who had uh, George Benson and Grant Green and Pat Martino in his group. So it was really a hot seat for guitar. So to get that gig when I was a young guy in New York, and go on the road with him for 2 years, and also when we weren't on the road, we played in Harlem every 3 nights a week. Um, it was invaluable,
Yeah.
and so I feel like I can. And then from there, I ended up with Stanley, and so I feel like I have um, something to offer students from getting to play with the masters like that. Um, and so, and I think the universities I teach at also saw value in what I could offer them, and we listen and transcribe the greats, and I make them. That's you have to learn from who came before you. So we listen to Grant Green and George Benson and all those guys, and of course whoever they're into, that we go to that. But we start with the Wes Montgomerys and really try to get a good foundation for the students, and I enjoy doing it. I enjoy passing it on.
That's amazing. You gotta look back, of course, in order to move forward. So that's
Exactly.
great that you're imparting that foundation. And what's even better is that they get to see you actually working professionally, still touring and recording, and they have a real live example of what it means to do this thing professionally.
Yeah, that's true. Like my students will come out to hear me play,
For
and that's
extra
a big.
credit?
They do get extra credit.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
touring now up until August 13th with Steely Dan opening
yeah.
for him. Wow, tell us about that experience. Because Steely Dan, of course, man, so many folks have sampled their work, and they've been out here, doing it for a long time, a legendary band. So what's it like opening for them?
Well, it's amazing. It's a great experience. My working trio with Jared Gold on organ and McClinty Hunter, who and he
I
said to say
Howard
hello.
Buddy. Yeah.
Howard, that's right. Yeah, we're hanging out. I told him I was going to be talking to you. He said to say hi.
Oh, tell him I said
I definitely will. Um, and so, yeah, Steely Dan is kind of jazz influenced, obviously. Of all the rock groups, they would be probably the. I think most jazz musicians would agree, the hippest. They have jazz musicians on their records, and on their touring band. Four horns, three background vocals. It's amazing. They're great. And I got a call from Donald Fagen's manager saying that Donald wanted to see if he could get Dave Stryker. So that was a
wow.
nice email to get. And so we've been opening up for him all summer. And it's kind of hip. You got to give it up to Donald for picking a jazz organ trio to open up for this show. You know, these people, I'm not sure what, you know, what they're expecting, but they're getting what they're getting is we're swinging. You know, we're playing we're doing our thing. We're, hitting them with
Indeed.
and it's going over well. People are, because I think of maybe the audience for a Steely Dan show is a little more sophisticated than an audience for the Doobie Brothers or something. But they know what they're getting with Steely Dan, and I think Donald figures that it sets the mood right for them. I mean, they come out with a kind of a big band type tune. They start each set with that, and it's like, so it's a lot of fun. I think we're exposing our music to a wider audience for sure. We did a string of 8 amphitheaters, and now we're doing regular theaters, and yeah, about 25 dates this summer.
Wow. Awesome. So you guys are making the rounds. And then on top of that, of course, this year you released another album. What album count is this for you? I think it's around 40.
I think it's 34 as a leader under my name, but I've done
Wow.
a lot of records as a sideman, from there,
Right.
and a ton of records sideman and done some producing as well.
Yeah, this record though, let me just say it's gorgeous. It's different. As We Are, you've got Brian Blade, of course, John Patitucci, and the most gorgeous string quartet with you that I think really puts you in kind of a different light. The feel of it really, gosh, it feels cradling. I can't think of another word, but it feels really like a haven, like an audio haven kind of. It's beautiful. Tell me
Thanks,
about the making
Kiana.
of
That's
it.
so nice of you to say that. And um, I it's always was a dream of mine to do something with strings. And when the pandemic hit and musicians, all our tours and gigs and things got, just like everybody, it all closed down. We found ourselves with more time, and I started thinking about what I wanted to do in 2020 and 2021. What haven't I done that I wanted to do? And strings was always there. I mean, I was lucky. I've done a couple big band records. I did a record prior to the pandemic in 2019 in Germany. Bob Mincer arranged with the WDR big band. I'm really proud of that one too. But this was something, out of my comfort zone, but something that I wanted to do. And I had Julian Shore, the pianist. I had known him since he was 14 years old when
Wow.
I was teaching at a jazz camp, and he was in my combo. So, it's just funny how
Full circle.
things full circle. Exactly. And I kept up with him through the years, and 20 years later, we collaborated on this record. So I had heard some of his string writing, and I knew that I needed somebody that knew more about string writing than me to help to collaborate on this. So I called him and asked him if he wanted to collaborate on this, and he said absolutely. And he thought string quartet was the way to go because obviously financially I couldn't get the New York Philharmonic or anything, or like, but we could make with a string quartet. It's we could make a full sound that we wanted, and what I wanted to do was to incorporate the strings into the music more than just a lot of the records that I love, like Wes Montgomery and records where the strings are a little, maybe we would call it sweetening.
Yeah.
They're kind of sound like added later, some of those CTI records, although I love those records. So we traded different things that we liked string writing wise, and back and forth. And I started writing music the end of 2020, and would send a demo to Julian and say, do your thing to it. And man, what he started sending me back was so inspiring to hear. I mean, I swear I heard a couple of those, and I was just like, wow, it just brought tears to my. He would demo them on his his keyboards and his synths. Keyboard players have all those chops for
Yeah.
recording and stuff. Um, and so I said, wow, this is even better than I thought. So I want to reach out to the two heaviest players on this, in the world to me, right now, Brian Blade and John Patitucci, who of course were Wayne Shorter's rhythm section for 20 years,
Mm.
and as well as Chick Corea, and we're all fans of those two guys. So, and they both signed on and said yeah, and my friend Sarah Caswell, great violinist, she put the string quartet together, and so in June of 2021 we recorded, and yeah, I'm so happy with it. And we actually got to play live with that same group at Birdland last week for
Yeah.
5 nights. We did 2 nights with just Sarah and John and Brian and Julie and myself, quintet, and then the last 3 nights we brought the string quartet, and I was like, oh wow, what is this going to sound like? I've never played live with a string quartet. How is this going to work? But she had the top players, in the in New York area. She had Benny von Gutzeit was on the record. He's the viola player, and Tomoko Omura was on second violin, and Malcolm Parson, great cello player. So we were all just like on cloud nine. Every night was just so much fun.
I'm sure. And that's gotta feel so rewarding that to now have your student, giving back to you kind of, in the way that you poured into him. I'm sure that feels like, oh man, that's kind of an accomplishment. I would
It
think.
really, it really does. I mean, it's such a great feeling when one of your students, and this happens a lot, that you'll have a student come in that's at a certain level and kind of learning, and they blossom, and then they become like amazing and creative and like wow, and some of them, it's just great. And I mean, it's up to the student to do the work. I mean, all you can do is kind of try to be inspiring and help them and with certain things, but we all know that it's up to no matter what you're into, you have to do the work. So and Julian is a really good example of that. He told me that week was it still, he told me, he said that week made him want to become a musician when he was in my combo,
Wow.
even though he said I yelled at him a little bit.
Well, that comes with it, you gotta have a little push.
I don't know if it was technically yelling, but he does have a couple funny stories about that week. Yeah.
That's so funny. So the new album, As We Are, of course, you can get it wherever digital albums are sold, I'm sure. And tell folks how they can catch up with you. I know the tour ends on the 13th of August.
Yeah. On the they can catch, well, if anything about me you can find on my website, davestryker.com. You can buy any of my records, books, all that kind of stuff, find out where I'm playing, and also I'm davestryker.bandcamp.com is a cool place to get. A lot of people like that because you're supporting the artist that way, whereas we all know Spotify and those, they're great tools, but the artists do not really get paid that well on them.
Right.
So those are two good ways to find my music. And then yeah, as far as the Steely Dan thing, I'll be out here till we finish up at the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, kind of up in our area, in New York area, the 10th, the 12th, and the 13th, and we'll be all over Florida coming up, and some other dates. You can go to SteelyDan.com and find out. And this has been a lot of fun, doing this tour this summer, and I'll be at Monterey this fall,
Nice.
with the same group. Well, we have with Warren Wolf playing with us, and yeah, keeping it going, keeping the music going, trying to spread some positivity out in the world, with the sounds.
You're certainly doing that, and always giving back at the same time through your teaching efforts. If folks want to get lessons from the Dave Stryker, how do they do that? If I know, of course, you got to enroll in school, but I'm sure
Well,
privately.
actually, that's thanks for asking. I have an online teaching school at artistworks.com, and uh, it's a video platform where I have my lessons live on the site, and they can at all levels from basic to advanced. The student goes on there and takes a short lesson, and then they can send a video in, and then once a week I answer uh, the demonstration video back to them. So really the only way I'm teaching privately these days, because I'm just too busy. And when I'm home, I gotta, you know, do try to work on my own things. And
Of course, you got to juggle. It's a constant juggling act.
yes, yes,
Do you encourage all skill levels to take lessons with you, or do you expect folks
yes.
at a certain
No,
level?
I have. It's like I said. There's basic to intermediate
Right.
to So yeah, anybody can sign up. It's pretty good deal at
Because some
Artist
folks
Work.
might be intimidated, like, oh, Dave Stryker. I don't know.
No, not at all. The thing about music is we all remember the first time we learned how to play a C chord on guitar, and then we're able to go to a G chord on guitar. So we all had to start there, and then and no matter where you get, I don't care what musician will tell you, it's never ending. You can, there's always more to learn. You can always put on John Coltrane or Charlie Parker and get humbled.
Right. And learn something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, Dave Stryker, this has been great. We got to do this again.
Kiana, I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days, and I love all you do and on the airwaves and now with your podcast, and I can't wait to see what you got coming up too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining me on Artimacy, my little old podcast here. I appreciate it.
All right,
All right. Bye bye. Take
all the
care.
best. Take care.
Indeed.